Chapter 1. Inspiration over Instruction. The Secret Power of Influence. Have you ever noticed how people instantly pull back when you tell them what to do? It doesn't matter if it's a friend, a colleague, your partner, or even your own child. The moment you start saying, "You should," something inside them resists. They cross their arms, maybe not physically, but emotionally. They stop listening. Why? Because no one wants to be told. We all want to be understood. See, human beings don't change because someone told them to. They change because something inspired them to. And that's where real influence begins. Not in control, not in orders, not in authority, but in inspiration. When you learn to inspire instead of instruct, you stop pushing people and start pulling them toward a vision. Let's think about this for a second. The people who've changed your life, the ones who made you want to do better, did they lecture you? Did they dictate every step? Probably not. They made you feel something. They sparked something inside you, a fire that made you want to rise, to act, to become more. That's what great leaders, parents, teachers, and even friends do. They don't demand change. They create the space where change feels natural. The trap of telling. We live in a world full of advice. Everyone's telling someone else what to do. Social media screams, "Do this." Bosses bark orders. Friends give unsolicited advice. Even strangers online tell you how to live, how to eat, how to think. And what happens? Instead of becoming better, people become defensive because being told triggers our ego, that part of us that says, "I can decide for myself." So the harder you push, the more resistance you create. It's like trying to push open a door that actually says pull. You can use all your strength, but it won't budge because you're using the wrong approach. The moment you stop telling and start showing, things shift. Influence is energy. Influence is not about having power over someone. It's about creating energy within someone. Think about the people who light up a room when they walk in. They don't say much. They don't force their opinions on anyone. They just embody what they believe. Their calm, their focus, their confidence, it speaks louder than 1,000 words. That's influence. And it starts with alignment, when your words, actions, and energy all point in the same direction. You can't tell someone to be positive when your own energy is full of frustration. You can't tell someone to calm down while you're shouting. You can't tell someone to work harder when your effort is half-hearted. People don't follow advice. They follow example. The power of example. There's an old saying, "Preach not by words, but by deeds." If you want someone to grow, let them see you growing. If you want someone to be kind, let them feel your kindness. If you want your child to be honest, show them integrity in your daily choices. Example is silent, but it's louder than any command. Think about a child watching a parent. You don't have to tell them to say thank you. They'll learn it when they hear you say it. You don't have to tell them to respect others. They'll learn it when they see you treat people with respect. That's influence in its purest form, living your message instead of shouting it. Why people resist being told. At the root of it all, people resist control because control steals ownership. When someone feels they're being controlled, they lose their sense of choice. And without choice, motivation dies. Imagine someone says, "You have to work out every day." How do you feel? Probably tense, pressured. Now imagine someone says, "You'll feel amazing if you move your body every day. Even a short walk can lift your energy." Feels lighter, right? That's not control, that's empowerment. The difference is tone. One demands, the other invites. That's the secret to influence. Invite, don't impose. The psychology behind it. Psychologists call this the reactance effect. When people sense their freedom is being threatened, they naturally push back, even if the advice is good. Tell a teenager, "Don't touch that," and suddenly that's exactly what they want to touch. Tell an employee, "You must do this," and suddenly they feel less motivated. But give people a reason and they open up. Give them choice and they become curious. Give them ownership and they become unstoppable. So instead of saying, "Do this," say, "Here's why this works." Instead of, "You should," try, "Have you considered trying this?" Subtle difference, massive impact. Inspiring by asking, not telling. One of the most powerful tools of influence is not instruction, it's questions. Questions engage people's minds. They make people think. And when someone arrives at their own realization, it sticks. Instead of saying, "You need to be more confident," ask, "What would you do differently if you believed in yourself more?" Instead of saying, "You should eat healthier," ask, "How do you feel after a week of eating light, natural foods?" That's influence, guiding without controlling, leading people to their own truth. Because when someone discovers something themselves, they own it. And when they own it, they live it. Leading through connection. At the heart of all influence is connection. You can't move people you don't understand. You can't inspire people you don't care about. Connection begins with empathy, with listening not to reply, but to feel. When someone feels heard, their heart opens. When someone feels judged, it closes. So before trying to lead, listen. Before you speak, understand. Before you advise, connect. When people feel your care, they'll trust your words. When they sense your ego, they'll reject them, no matter how good the message is. From telling to teaching. Great mentors don't lecture, they guide. They don't say, "Do this." They say, "Here's what I've learned. Here's what worked for me." They share experiences instead of imposing rules. And that changes everything. Because the moment you shift from, "I know better," to, "Here's what I've discovered," you stop sounding like an instructor and start sounding like a human. People connect to humans, not authorities. So when you teach, do it with humility. Share your scars as well as your success. Be real, be raw. That's what touches hearts. The energy of respect. Influence is not built on dominance, it's built on respect. When you respect someone's path, they open to your words. When you look down on them, they shut down. Everyone's journey is different. Maybe someone is behind you in one area, but ahead of you in another. So instead of saying, "You need to change," say, "I've been there. Here's what helped me." That tone, respectful, equal, makes people feel seen. And that's when transformation begins. The law of attraction in leadership. There's a universal truth. You don't attract what you demand, you attract what you embody. If you want loyalty, be loyal. If you want kindness, be kind. If you want people to listen, start by listening. It's not about telling people to become something. It's about becoming the example that inspires them. This law never fails because energy doesn't lie. People may not consciously understand why they're drawn to you, but they can feel it. They can feel authenticity, and authenticity is irresistible. When silence speaks louder. Sometimes the most powerful way to influence others is through silence, through your calm presence, through your unshakable consistency. You don't have to announce your wisdom. You don't have to prove your point. Just live it. Let your results do the talking. The right people will notice, and even the wrong people, the ones who doubted you, they'll start to wonder. They'll see your peace, your growth, your progress, and they'll ask themselves, what's different about them? And that question, that curiosity, is where their transformation begins. The circle of true influence. Let's break it down. There are 3 levels of influence. 1. Force, controlling through fear or authority. 2. Persuasion, convincing through logic or emotion. 3. Inspiration, transforming through example and energy. Force fades fast, persuasion lasts longer, but inspiration, that's timeless. When you inspire someone, you plant a seed that grows long after you're gone. It might take months, it might take years, but it will grow. That's why true leaders focus not on control, but on contribution, not on being followed, but on being remembered. Your challenge. So here's your challenge. This week, instead of telling someone what to do, inspire them. When you want to correct someone, pause. Ask yourself, can I show this through my own behavior instead? When you feel the urge to advise, stop. Ask, can I turn this into a question that makes them think? And when you want to lead, remember, leadership is not about power, it's about presence. Closing message. Chapter 2. The Art of Silent Leadership. There's a kind of power that doesn't need noise, a kind of strength that doesn't demand attention, a kind of leadership that doesn't shout, yet everyone listens. That's silent leadership. We live in a world that glorifies volume. Everyone's talking, everyone's teaching, everyone's posting, preaching, persuading. But among all that noise, the real leaders, the ones who move hearts, change directions, and build legacies, are often the quiet ones. They don't force their way into attention, their presence commands it naturally. They don't tell people what to do, they simply live what they believe, and people follow. The noise of leadership. Let's be honest, leadership today looks noisy. The louder someone is, the more people assume they're in control. We equate noise with confidence and silence with weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Silence is not weakness. Silence is mastery. Because when you've mastered yourself, your emotions, your reactions, your energy, you no longer need to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to argue. You don't need to demand obedience. Your actions, your energy, your consistency, they do the talking. That's the art of silent leadership. Silence is magnetic. Have you ever met someone whose calmness made you feel safe? Someone who didn't say much, but when they did, everyone leaned in? That's presence. That's power. That's the unspoken language of silent leadership. People trust quiet confidence more than loud instruction. Why? Because noise is often insecurity wearing a mask. The louder the voice, the deeper the fear that no one is listening. But when you truly believe in yourself, when your values are clear and your purpose is strong, you don't need to convince anyone. You simply embody it, and the world responds. The inner stillness. Silent leadership starts with inner stillness. You can't lead others if you're at war with yourself. You can't calm others if you're constantly agitated inside. The greatest leaders, from spiritual teachers to world changers, all share one thing in common: inner peace. They learn to quiet the noise in their own minds before trying to guide others, because only from stillness can you see clearly. It's like standing in muddy water. The more you stir it, the cloudier it becomes. But when you let it settle, the water clears. That's how wisdom works. You don't find it by reacting. You find it by listening to your own silence. The ego's trap. Most people don't listen to lead. They lead to be heard. That's the ego's trap. Ego says, make them listen, prove your point, show them who's boss. But leadership isn't about ego. It's about impact. And ego-driven leadership might work for a moment, but it burns out fast. Because people can sense when you're trying to control them versus when you're trying to lift them up. Silent leaders don't lead from ego. They lead from example. They're not obsessed with being right, they're committed to being real. And in that authenticity, they earn a level of trust that noise never could. Speaking less, meaning more. The more you speak, the less your words weigh. But when you choose your words carefully, when you only speak with purpose, every sentence becomes gold. Think about the most powerful people in history. They weren't necessarily the ones who spoke the most. They were the ones who spoke with meaning. A short sentence from someone grounded in truth can shake a room more than an hour-long speech from someone trying to impress. That's why silence gives weight to your voice. When people know you don't speak just to fill the air, they listen when you finally do. Energy over volume. Leadership is energy, not volume. You can walk into a room and say nothing, yet everyone feels your presence. Why? Because energy is contagious. When your energy is calm, others feel grounded. When your energy is chaotic, others feel uneasy. So instead of focusing on what to say, focus on who you are being when you say it. Your energy communicates more than your words ever will. It tells people whether you are confident or afraid, open or defensive, loving or judgmental. The art of silent leadership begins with mastering that energy, aligning it with peace, purpose, and authenticity. When you do that, you don't have to force anyone to follow you. They'll want to. The strength of restraint. True strength is not in how loudly you can speak, but in how calmly you can stay silent. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, anyone can react, but it takes power, deep, disciplined power, to stay grounded when chaos erupts around you. When everyone else is losing control and you remain composed, that's leadership. Because people don't follow the loudest voice, they follow the calmest energy. The one who can say, "It's okay, let's think clearly, let's move forward." That calmness, that restraint, that steadiness is what separates a true leader from a loud one. How silence builds trust. Here's something you might not expect. Silence builds trust faster than speech. When someone speaks less, it makes others feel safe to express more. They don't feel judged, they feel heard. In meetings, in relationships, in parenting, when you hold space instead of dominating it, people open up. They start revealing their truth. And that's when real influence happens. Because trust doesn't come from what you say. It comes from how you make people feel. When people feel respected in your silence, they'll respect your guidance in your words. Leading without titles. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need authority to make an impact. You can be the quiet one in the room and still shift the entire mood. Because leadership is not about position, it's about presence. You lead every time you choose patience over anger. You lead every time you choose understanding over judgment. You lead every time you choose peace over power. Silent leaders don't announce their leadership, they live it. And the world recognizes it, even if they never say a word. The discipline of observation. Silent leadership is not just about not talking, it's about observing. When you observe before you react, you understand. When you understand, you respond wisely. The most successful people, in business, in life, in relationships, are those who've mastered observation. They notice details others miss. They pick up on tone, emotion, body language. They sense when something's off, and they adjust with grace. Observation gives you insight, and insight gives you power. That's why silent leaders often appear intuitive. They simply see more because they're not distracted by their own noise. The balance of silence and speech. Now, silence doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking from awareness. There are moments when silence teaches, and moments when words heal. A silent leader knows the difference. They speak only when their words can serve, uplift, or guide. And when they do, people listen, not out of fear, but out of respect. So if you want to lead silently, learn to balance both. Silence for understanding, speech for inspiration. Together, they form harmony, the kind of harmony that people feel in their bones. Leading by energy, not authority. When people feel your energy, your groundedness, your compassion, your quiet strength, they follow you naturally. You don't have to chase loyalty, you attract it. The people around you begin to mirror your calm. They start to handle challenges differently. They start speaking with more patience, acting with more clarity. That's when you realize leadership isn't about changing others. It's about becoming so centered that others can't help but change around you. The ripple effect of silent leadership. Imagine dropping a single pebble into a still lake. It doesn't make much noise, but look closer. The ripples spread far and wide. That's what silent leadership is like. You might not be loud, you might not be visible, but your influence travels. Your words echo in people's minds long after you've stopped speaking. Your calm becomes their calm. Your strength becomes their model. You change rooms without saying a word because your energy speaks on your behalf. How to practice silent leadership daily? Let's get practical. How do you lead silently in your daily life? 1. Listen with intention. Don't listen to reply. Listen to feel. People can sense when they're truly heard. 2. Choose your words carefully. Before you speak, ask, is this necessary? Is this kind? Is this helpful? If not, silence is stronger. 3. Control your emotions. Reacting in anger makes you lose power. Responding with calm makes you gain respect. 4. Actions do the talking. Chapter 3. Empower, don't command. Have you ever noticed how people change when they feel trusted? When someone believes in them, really believes, something awakens inside. They start standing taller. They start thinking differently. They start owning their potential. That's empowerment, and it's one of the most beautiful forms of leadership. Because when you empower people, you don't just get results, you build confidence, you build ownership, you build hearts. But when you command people, you might get obedience, you might get speed, you might get compliance, but you won't get their soul. And real success, real growth, only happens when the soul is involved. The difference between command and empowerment. Command says, do this. Empowerment says, you can do this. Command is about control. Empowerment is about trust. Command limits. Empowerment expands. When you command someone, you take responsibility away from them. When you empower them, you give responsibility to them. And that difference, that small shift, changes everything. Because people who are commanded will only do what they're told. But people who are empowered will do more than what's expected. They'll surprise you. They'll exceed the standard. They'll own the mission. That's the magic of empowerment. So why do so many people still choose to command instead of empower? Because control feels safe. It feels efficient. It feels like you're the one holding the wheel. But here's the truth. Commanding might get you obedience today, but it costs you growth tomorrow. When you tell people exactly what to do, you might finish faster, but you rob them of the chance to learn, to think, to rise. Empowerment takes longer. It's slower in the beginning, but in the long run, it builds leaders, not followers. And if your goal is to create impact that lasts, you must stop creating followers and start creating leaders. The fear of letting go. Command often comes from fear. Fear that people won't do it right. Fear that things will fall apart without your control. Fear that you'll lose authority if others shine. But here's what every true leader eventually learns. When you let others shine, your own light doesn't dim. It multiplies. Because leadership isn't about being the brightest star. It's about building a sky full of stars. When you empower others, you expand your influence, not shrink it. It takes courage to let go of control, but that's where true leadership begins. Empowerment creates ownership. When people feel ownership, they act differently. They don't wait for instructions, they take initiative. They don't avoid responsibility, they embrace it. Why? Because it's theirs. The success, the results, the mission, it belongs to them now. Think of a workplace where everyone's waiting for the boss to tell them what to do. That's a place full of control, not creativity. Now imagine a workplace where people say, "Let me take this project. I have an idea." That's empowerment. That's innovation. That's life. Ownership transforms effort into passion. Because people don't fight for orders, they fight for what they believe in. How empowerment builds confidence. When you empower someone, you give them a message louder than any speech. I believe in you. And that message changes people. Think back to your own life. Wasn't there someone who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself? A teacher, a parent, a friend, a mentor, someone who said, I know you can do this. And in that moment, something shifted, didn't it? Their belief became the spark for your belief. That's the heart of empowerment, transferring belief. Command says, do what I say. Empowerment says, you already have what it takes. One creates dependence, the other creates confidence. And confidence is the foundation of freedom. The chain reaction of empowerment. When you empower one person, you don't just lift them, you lift everyone they touch. Because empowered people empower others. It's like a flame. You light one candle, and that candle lights another, and before long, you've illuminated a whole room. That's how empowerment spreads, quietly, naturally, beautifully. Every great movement in history began with one person empowering another, not commanding, not controlling, but believing. Empowerment in leadership. The best leaders don't just give tasks, they give trust. They don't micromanage, they mentor. They don't say, here's how to do it. They say, I trust your judgment, surprise me. That sentence, I trust your judgment, is one of the most powerful forms of motivation in the world because it shifts the responsibility from obedience to ownership. And people rise to the level of trust you give them. If you trust small, they'll think small. If you trust big, they'll grow big. Empowerment is the fertilizer of greatness. The courage to step back. Sometimes empowering means stepping back, even when it's hard to watch someone struggle, because growth lives in struggle. When you rescue people too quickly, you steal their opportunity to build resilience. You might think you're helping, but you're actually holding them back. Let them fall. Let them figure it out. Be there when they rise. That's empowerment. It's not about doing everything for someone. It's about giving them the space to do it for themselves. Empowerment in everyday life. Empowerment isn't just for leaders, in offices or teams. It's for everyone. Parents can empower their children. Partners can empower each other. Friends can empower friends. When a parent says, I trust you to make the right choice, they teach independence. When a partner says, I believe in your dream, they plant courage. When a friend says, you've got this, I know you can handle it, they give strength. Empowerment is an everyday act of love disguised as freedom. How to empower others. Here's the truth. Empowerment is not complicated. It's about belief, trust, and space. 1. Believe in their potential. See what they can't see yet. Remind them of their strengths until they believe it too. 2. Trust them with responsibility. Let them make decisions and mistakes. That's how they learn. 3. Give them space to grow. Don't hover, don't control. Just stand nearby with support, not supervision. 4. Celebrate effort, not perfection. When people know their effort is seen, they'll keep trying. And 5. Lead by example. Show them what empowerment looks like through your actions, not your words. The empowerment mindset. To truly empower others, you must first empower yourself. You can't pour belief into others if your own cup is empty. You can't teach confidence if you don't feel it. So start by trusting you, your instincts, your path, your growth. When you live from a place of self-belief, it naturally overflows to others. Because energy transfers. You can't fake empowerment. People feel your authenticity or your fear, and they'll mirror it. So if you want to build confident people around you, become confident yourself. Letting others own the spotlight. True empowerment means you're not afraid to step out of the spotlight. You don't need to be the hero of every story. You're happy watching others shine because their success doesn't threaten yours. That's maturity. That's legacy. A commander needs followers to feel powerful. A true leader creates more leaders, and that's power at its highest form. When people around you succeed, it's not competition. It's confirmation that you led well. When empowering feels risky, let's be real, empowering others can feel uncomfortable because it means letting go. It means trusting someone who might fail. But think of this, if you never let them try, they'll never learn. If you always hold the wheel, they'll never drive. And maybe they'll stumble, maybe they'll make mistakes. But every mistake will teach them something obedience never could. Empowerment isn't about perfection, it's about progress. And the more you empower others, the more capable your environment becomes, whether it's your family, your team, or your community. The ripple back to you. Here's the beautiful irony of empowerment. When you lift others, they lift you too. When people feel trusted, they become loyal. When people feel believed in, they work harder. When people feel seen, they give their best. You create an ecosystem of respect, and that respect always circles back. Empowerment isn't giving away your power, it's multiplying it. The story of the guide. Let me tell you a short story. A young mountaineer once asked his guide, "How do you always lead people safely through the mountains?" The guide smiled. Chapter 4. Be the example, not the enforcer. Have you ever noticed that people rarely do what you say, but they always notice what you do? We've all experienced it. A manager tells their team to be punctual, yet they themselves arrive late. A parent tells their child to eat healthy, yet they snack on junk food. A friend preaches kindness, yet they gossip behind your back. And what happens? People resist. They lose respect. They stop listening. Because the truth is simple. Actions speak louder than words. You cannot command respect. You cannot demand trust. You cannot enforce values. You can only live them. The power of example. Leading by example is not about perfection. It's about authenticity. It's about alignment. It's about showing up as the person you hope others will become. Imagine a teacher who preaches honesty but cheats on their taxes. Do you think students will internalize honesty from that teacher? Now, imagine a teacher who quietly lives with integrity, always owns their mistakes, and treats others fairly. Students notice. They mirror that behavior. They learn from the example, not the lesson plan. That's the transformative power of living your values. Why enforcement fails. Enforcement often relies on fear or obligation. It says, do this or else. And people comply, temporarily, but deep down they resist. Compliance doesn't inspire loyalty or passion. It creates resentment, rebellion, and minimal effort. Enforcement assumes that authority is enough to motivate change. But the human spirit is never truly moved by force. It thrives on inspiration, example, and connection. The moment you switch from enforcing rules to embodying principles, you tap into something far more powerful: influence without friction. The mirror effect. People learn more from what they see than what they hear. Think about it. You don't teach empathy by telling someone to be empathetic. You teach it by showing empathy in your interactions. You don't teach courage by telling someone to be brave. You teach it by facing your own fears openly. You don't teach discipline by imposing schedules. You teach it by maintaining consistency in your own life. People reflect what they observe, and when you lead by example, you set a standard that cannot be ignored. The daily practice of example. Being the example is not about grand gestures. It's about the small, consistent choices you make every day. It's about how you speak to people. It's about how you handle stress. It's about how you honor your commitments. It's about how you treat people when no one is watching. Every action becomes a silent message. I live this, not just preach it. And over time, those small actions build trust, credibility, and respect far more than any speech or lecture ever could. Authenticity over authority. Authority can be given. Authenticity must be earned. People can sense when someone is faking values or pretending to care. It's visible in the tone of their voice, the inconsistency of their actions, the energy they carry. But authenticity? That resonates. It inspires. It creates influence that lasts. When you embody authenticity, you don't need to enforce rules. People naturally follow the integrity they see. Stories speak louder than orders. Let's think about stories. Have you ever been inspired by someone's story? Not a motivational quote, not a directive, but a story of struggle, resilience, and triumph. Stories create connection. Stories create empathy. Stories create a bridge between your experience and someone else's potential. When you live your story openly, sharing lessons from your journey, admitting mistakes, showing growth, you become a living story that others can learn from. You don't have to command. They want to follow. The leadership of humility. Being the example requires humility. You're not above anyone else. You're not untouchable. You're not perfect. You are human. And by embracing your imperfections openly, you make it safe for others to grow. People don't respect perfection. They respect courage. They respect honesty. They respect someone who admits when they're wrong and continues to rise. That's leadership. Not enforcement, not control, but courage in action. Influence through presence. Sometimes influence doesn't come from what you do or say. It comes from how you show up. Presence is a silent teacher. When you enter a room calm, focused, and compassionate, people feel it. When you face challenges with grace, people notice. When you stay consistent, even when no one is watching, your example becomes a benchmark. Your presence teaches more than your words could ever. The long-term impact. Think long-term. Enforcement produces short-term results. People obey out of obligation. They do just enough to avoid consequences. Example produces long-term impact. People emulate out of respect. They internalize values. They carry lessons forward. A teacher who leads by example shapes not just the students of today, but the leaders of tomorrow. A parent who models integrity and kindness raises children who carry those principles for life. A friend who lives authenticity inspires others to embrace their truth. Example creates a ripple effect that enforcement never can. Walking your talk. To be the example, you must walk your talk. It's easy to give advice. It's easy to share principles. It's easy to quote motivational phrases. But it's far harder to live them, consistently, without attention, without reward. Walk your talk in every interaction. Keep your promises. Admit your mistakes. Show compassion before judgment. Value action over rhetoric. When your life becomes the message, you no longer need to convince anyone. They feel it. Leadership without words. You can lead a team without giving a single order. You can influence a family without preaching a single rule. You can inspire a friend without saying a single word. All it takes is your example, your energy, your choices, your consistency. They speak volumes. People follow not because they are told to, but because they see what's possible. That's the essence of true leadership. Influence that is effortless, quiet, and magnetic. The courage to inspire. It takes courage to be the example, because being the example means you can't hide behind instructions. You can't blame others. You can't point fingers. Every action reflects your values. Every choice communicates your principles. It's risky. It's vulnerable. But it's powerful. And when you embody that courage, you stop commanding others and start awakening the best in them. Practical ways to lead by example. Show integrity daily. Your decisions reflect your principles even in small, unseen moments. Practice accountability. Admit mistakes openly and learn publicly. Prioritize empathy. Treat others with kindness even when it's inconvenient. Demonstrate resilience. Face setbacks with courage and calm. Stay consistent. Your values should not fluctuate with circumstances. Every action becomes a lesson. Every choice becomes a guidepost. Every day you teach without speaking a word. The silent teacher. Think of yourself as a silent teacher. Every glance, every word, every act is a lesson. People watch more than they listen. They mimic more than they memorize. When you focus on being the example, you stop wasting energy on enforcement. You start investing energy in authenticity, consistency, and presence. And that energy is transformative. From enforcer to influencer. The enforcer is focused on compliance. The influencer is focused on transformation. Enforcement demands obedience. Example inspires growth. And here's the secret. When you lead by example, you don't just inspire action. You inspire belief. Belief in themselves. Belief in values. Belief in the possibility of better. And belief lasts far longer than fear or obligation. Final reflection. Never underestimate the power of living your values. People will forget what you said. People might forget what you did. But they will never forget how you made them feel through your actions. Be the example. Be the model. Be the living proof of the principles you hold dear. Because when you embody the change you wish to see, you no longer need to enforce. You simply inspire. And that is the Chapter 5, The Ripple Effect, How True Influence Changes the World. Have you ever thrown a pebble into a pond? The instant it touches the water, it creates ripples, small, gentle circles that spread far beyond the point of impact. One small action, one small choice, one small moment. Yet the effect travels outward, touching everything it meets. Influence works the same way. True influence doesn't shout, it radiates. True influence doesn't demand, it inspires. True influence doesn't aim for control, it aims for transformation. And the most extraordinary part? You never know how far your ripple will go. The nature of influence. We often underestimate the power of our actions. We wait for big moments to make a difference. a promotion, a speech, a life-altering decision. But life is built on small, consistent ripples, a kind word spoken at the right time, a patient gesture during frustration, a belief in someone when they can't believe in themselves. These ripples travel farther than we can imagine. A single moment of authenticity, courage, or compassion can touch someone's life so profoundly that they carry it forward for years, decades, even generations. Stories of quiet impact. Consider this. A teacher spends an extra 5 minutes with a struggling student, not because they must, but because they choose to care. That student grows up carrying the confidence that they matter. They become a parent, a leader, a mentor, passing forward the encouragement they once received. A coworker notices someone's hard work and acknowledges it publicly. That recognition sparks pride, motivation, and loyalty. The effect spreads through the team, shaping a culture of respect and acknowledgement. Even the smallest acts of integrity, returning a lost wallet, speaking up against injustice, supporting a friend in need, ripple outward. The world changes one ripple at a time. Influence is not about visibility. You don't need to be famous to create ripples. You don't need a title, a platform, or authority. The quiet ones, the consistent ones, the authentic ones, they often have the most profound influence. Why? Because influence isn't about recognition. It's about impact. Every time you choose patience over frustration, honesty over deception, empathy over judgment, you are creating ripples. And while you might not see the results immediately, they are moving. Silently, subtly, unstoppably. The influence of integrity. Integrity is the cornerstone of lasting influence. When your actions align with your words, people trust you. When people trust you, they follow your lead, not because they must, but because they want to. Consider a leader who always delivers on promises, treats others with respect, and admits mistakes openly. That leader's ripple goes beyond meetings, memos, or projects. It transforms the culture, shapes attitudes, and inspires countless others to follow suit. Integrity doesn't just create followers, it cultivates a movement. The influence of belief. Belief in someone is one of the most powerful forms of influence. When you tell someone, "I believe in you," it resonates far deeper than any instruction or critique. You might empower them to take a risk, to pursue a dream, to overcome a fear. And as they act on that belief, the effect multiplies. They begin to believe in themselves. They inspire others. The ripple continues. Sometimes your influence will outlive your presence. The encouragement you give today could echo for a lifetime. The influence of courage. Courage is contagious. When you stand firm in the face of fear, people notice. When you take action despite doubt, others are inspired to do the same. It doesn't have to be dramatic. A decision to speak up for what's right, even quietly, creates waves. Every act of courage, big or small, changes the environment around you. And even if no one applauds, your ripple remains. Courage doesn't ask for credit. It only asks for authenticity. The influence of consistency. Consistency is the quiet engine of influence. People don't just follow words, they follow patterns. They observe habits, routines, and principles. When you consistently live your values, you create trust. When people trust your example, your influence spreads naturally. Imagine a person who shows respect in every conversation, kindness in every action, and integrity in every choice. Over time, those ripples coalesce into a current that others can't ignore, a current that shapes culture, community, and lives. The ripple of leadership without control. The most enduring influence comes not from control, but from inspiration. Command demands attention temporarily. Influence inspires action permanently. When you empower, mentor, and guide without forcing, you create ripples that extend far beyond immediate results. A manager who trusts employees to take initiative shapes independent thinkers. A teacher who fosters curiosity ignites lifelong learners. A parent who nurtures autonomy raises resilient children. And each ripple flows outward, affecting communities, systems, and even the world. The chain reaction. Ripples multiply. One act of influence inspires another. One empowered individual empowers another. One courageous decision encourages a cascade of courage. Consider a small example. A neighbor helps an elderly person carry groceries. That elderly person shares the story with a friend. That friend volunteers at a shelter. Someone else witnesses that and donates to a cause. The effect spreads like invisible threads connecting people in unexpected ways. Your impact is rarely linear, it's exponential. Legacy beyond yourself. True influence leaves a legacy, not in monuments, titles, or accolades, but in lives touched. The people you inspire today may influence hundreds, thousands, even millions in their lifetime. And that ripple, started by your authenticity, courage, and belief, carries forward long after you're gone. Influence is immortal, not because it's recorded, but because it's felt. Your choices, values, and actions today become the foundation for tomorrow's leaders, innovators, and changemakers. The ripple of empathy. Empathy is one of the strongest forms of influence. When you understand someone's pain, validate their struggle, and act with compassion, you create ripples of healing. Empathy spreads naturally. It encourages kindness. It fosters collaboration. It bridges gaps. Even the smallest acts of understanding, listening without judgment, offering support, acknowledging feelings, create a wave of human connection that can touch countless lives. The ripple of mentorship. Mentorship is influence magnified. When you invest time in teaching, guiding, or inspiring someone, your ripple travels with them as they move forward. A mentor's words, lessons, and example echo through the mentee's actions. And when that mentee becomes a mentor, the ripple doubles, then triples, and spreads to an ever-widening circle. Your influence isn't just what you do, it's what you help others do. The ripple of authenticity. Authenticity is magnetic. When you live true to yourself, others are inspired to do the same. Your choices, no matter how small, create a ripple of courage, honesty, and self-respect. People who witness authenticity feel empowered to step into their own truth. And that ripple creates freedom, creativity, and integrity wherever it flows. The ripple in everyday life. You don't have to wait for a monumental moment to create a ripple. Every interaction, every choice, every act has ripple potential. Speaking with kindness when someone is rude, encouraging someone struggling, giving credit where it's due, standing up quietly for what's right. Each of these creates ripples that spread further than you can imagine. The multiplier effect. Ripples multiply through connection. When you influence one person, they influence another. That person influences someone else, and before long, your single choice has transformed a network of people. The beauty of true influence is that it never stops. It grows, expands, and evolves. Your smallest act today may spark a chain reaction that reshapes lives, communities, and even generations. The responsibility of influence. With influence comes responsibility. Every word, choice, and action matters. Every ripple counts. Even moments that feel insignificant carry the potential to shape the future. When you lead with integrity, compassion,